the music organizer project, you have an array list, and that's of tracks. Again, we have our type parameter here, so we know that they are all going to be of type track. Okay, so that's the first part. And because this is as close to real Java as possible, let's actually just properly create that. Now, if we are envisaging what this looks like in the JVM, my way of thinking about this is, okay, we have created a name called tracks. Okay, so we have the name, and this is going to refer to some array list object. Okay, really this array list object is managing an array that's going to store our tracks in. Okay, and if we come along and say, okay, track T becomes new track, then we can say tracks dot add T if we want to add our track to this, and let's keep proper Java. Okay, so again, the reminder here is if we are creating, so we have this new instance, and when we're adding something to an array list, what we're really doing is adding a reference to that particular object. And you can imagine that we go ahead and we can populate this array list with a lot of different tracks. Okay, that's the first part. Now, if we want to iterate across this safely using an iterator, we have to get this iterator object. Okay, so to get an iterator object, we need to tell the iterator what type of element it's going to be dealing with. By convention, we usually just call iterators IT, iterator for short. And then to get the iterator object, we get it from the actual array list. Okay, so we say tracks dot iterator. Okay. So this method, the way we understand tracks.iterator, is going to return an object of type iterator, which is parameterized by track. Now for us, this is going to look something like we have our name, and that's going to point to our iterator object. Okay. Again, remember in Java, everything is just an object, and it will have some type, and hopefully we'll have some reference to it. So even though this line of code might seem a little strange, what we're doing is we're creating an object, and all this object is going to do is be responsible for watching and walking through this array. Okay. So what we can do with this, we can ask questions. So a simple question, if we want a true or false answer, so Boolean has tracks. I can answer that by saying, well, take my iterator and then say has next. Okay. Now this is slightly weird because what you're saying is, do we have a next element? And the way to think about this is the iterator starts looking almost outside the left-hand side of the array. And then whenever you ask has next, it looks into the first position. Okay. And of course, in this case, we have all of our objects up here. So this will become, well, we know this is going to be true. Okay, so we can peek into the array and say, do we have a track in this array list? Okay, we're going to get the answer true. If we want to do something with that, and we can actually grab that object. So if we just have, I'm going to have to call this T2 because I had my T up there. Track T2 becomes IT.next. Okay. Again, in this case, next doesn't mean we have moved from the first element to the second. It just means now take this element. Okay. So then we'll actually have a reference to that, and we can basically, well, now I guess we're going to have T2 also now has a reference to this object because we created a line here. Okay, the other thing we can do is we can then just ask the iterator to remove the current track it's looking at. Okay, and we just call it something like that. Okay, and this will actually go ahead and get rid of this track from the collection. Okay. Then once we've actually called these methods, the next time we call hasNext, we'll start looking into the next location in the array list. Okay. Now, what's important to note here is that at no point do we have to manage the index. So there's no management of an index, okay? Even though we are testing to see if there are elements in this array list, we're then getting a reference to that element, and then we're removing an element and safely going through the rest of the array. We never have to say our size of the array has changed. What is the value of I right now? All of that is taken care of. So basically all of the details of management of an index are basically abstracted away, and you don't actually have to deal with them, which is kind of nice because then it means you don't run into some of these possible bugs that you might get. Okay. So this example has only really just looked at the first element of an array list. We haven't actually used this to move through an array list yet. So we actually need to move a little bit further.